least we don't look.
Everyone, this is Kristen Vincent, Chair of the Westborough School Committee. Today is Tuesday, August 17th, 2021. This meeting of the Westborough School Committee is called to order. This meeting of the Westborough School Committee is being conducted via remote participation. Due to the impacts of the COVID-19 virus, some aspects of the open meeting law have been suspended. Governor Baker issued an emergency order on March 12, 2020, allowing public bodies greater flexibility in utilizing technology in the conduct of meetings under the open meeting law. On June 16th, Governor Baker signed into law Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, which extended the relief provided by Governor Baker's temporary suspension of certain provisions of the open meeting law, authorizing public bodies subject to open meeting law to continue to hold public meetings entirely by virtual or remote means until April 1st, 2022. Westborough School Committee meetings can be accessed via Westborough TV's government channels, Verizon 28, Charter 192, and online on the Westborough TV YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/WestboroughTV. Any votes we take this evening will be roll call votes due to the remote participation. And thank you to Westborough TV for covering the broadcast tonight. As a reminder, a recording of this meeting can be accessed from the Westborough TV website or YouTube channel at any time, probably starting tomorrow. We have with us tonight Superintendent Amber Bach, Assistant Superintendent Dr. Daniel Mayer, Director of Finance and Administration David Gordon, Vice Chair of the School Committee Steve Durrett, School Committee members Sarah Dulé, Lisa Edinburgh, and Raghu Nandan. And we have staff from Westborough TV handling the broadcast and recording of this meeting. And our agenda for this meeting is as follows. We are here to review and approve final opening guidelines for the 2021-2022 school year. And we will review and approve any revisions that might be needed to policy EBCFA for face coverings. So I just want to say thank you to the committee members and our administrators for your flexibility in allowing us to schedule this meeting tonight and allowing us to meet remotely. This meeting was not part of our regular rotation of school committee meetings, and I'm traveling for work, so I'm grateful for this opportunity to meet as we prepare to begin the school year in just a few weeks. So with that, we have a focused agenda regarding safety protocols needed to begin the school year. And I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Bach as we move to our first agenda item to look at the final opening guidelines.
Thank you. It is really good to see you. We all actually needed the break, and so it was nice to have a rest from meetings so that you could have some summer respite and time away, since the commitment it takes to serve on the board is a fairly continual and stressful and busy job. So welcome back to the school year ahead. We are excited for its start, and I'm looking forward to sharing with you our plans for reopening and stepping you through our protocols. I want to start by just recognizing that this is a path that's well worn by us. We've had the journey of the last year and a half managing different protocols, and so I want to begin by thanking the different boards that I've been meeting with. I attended the Board of Health on August 10th. I was able to work with the Safety Committee on the 9th. We had a labor board discussion on the 16th, and here we are tonight to speak with you, all in preparation for moving forward to put out the updated protocols, basically drawing from our practices of last year, looking at the current guidelines have been stated by the Department of Public Health and the Department of DESE to give us guidance on schools. And tonight, what I would like to do is step you through the draft of Westborough's plans. So I'll have Daniel pull that document up, and we'll skim through it so that he's able to share with you and you can see it visually. So I want to highlight that it's called the draft, and it will be a draft until you approve it this evening, with the goal of being able to then target, with your approval, pulling the draft label off of it, finalizing a final proof and edit, and sharing it out to the community of families and faculty on Thursday. So first, I want to begin by recognizing, again, there's a short recognition of the shared work of different groups. And as you scroll down, you see, I think, one of the really impressive celebrations, which is the incredibly strong vaccination rate of the Westborough community. I've been talking with numerous superintendents around us. They are certainly impressed and envious of the quality of vaccination rate that exists in Westborough. I just want to give a shout out to families who got their children vaccinated, to faculty who are highly vaccinated, and our whole community. It really does provide a protective value and a sense of reassurance during what continues to be some challenges around managing COVID. So currently our vaccination rate for 12 to 19-year-olds is greater than 95%. We're in a really good shape. I anticipate that, families that might have students partially vaccinated or as they come into age for vaccination for that 12-year-old group will continue to keep our numbers strong. And certainly we hope for the advantageous start of vaccination rates for younger students. The news on that will be part of the ongoing updates that we provide. Certainly that always breaks in the news first, and we'll look forward to processing that with the Board of Health and making plans for our community. So if you scroll on down further, I think what's really important is to emphasize the fact that we've made incredible progress as a community, and yet we will have practices in place. And I think it's worth people reading the introductory letter that I provide around that process. And then I think the heart of the pieces that we want to share with you tonight, I've used the reopening FAQ format that seems to be a favorite of families. It means you're not trying to move through more dense paragraphs. You can kind of like find the bullets easily. And it's a format that we'll continue moving forward with this year. One other note I want to make before we begin the discussion is that when we send this out to families and faculty on Thursday, we will attach a doc where people can drop questions. So I will then take those and utilize them to begin reactivating our first FAQ of follow-up to families, and to faculty as needed. I just really want to emphasize the importance of how we leveraged that. It's so much more meaningful that instead of individual email questions, we're able to then answer back to the broader community and share and provide a record where people can go back and see that. So we will use that again, and it will be attached in the communication that we share out on Thursday.
Thank you for mentioning that, Amber. And I feel like as a school committee, that's also very helpful to have one central place where we're gathering all of the questions that then can be answered out to the broad community. Because if we each get individual questions and then we have to funnel them through you, and it just can get confusing. So I really appreciate that strategy of having a link in there for people to submit questions, and then we can just turn those right back around and answer them back out on this. So thank you.
Definitely. I think the other thing I want to highlight, and I think, Kristen, you were going to discuss this, that there was an error misprint from the Board of Health meeting in the Community Advocate. And so before I go into my discussion, I think we want to be clear that they misprinted. I don't know if you want to speak about it, just that, again.
Yeah, sure. I just want to acknowledge that there was an article in the Community Advocate. I think it came out yesterday. It incorrectly stated that in Westborough, vaccinated students will have the choice whether or not to wear masks at school. That was not what the superintendent was recommending at the Board of Health meeting, and that is not the guidance that we received from the Board of Health. So it was part of our discussion in terms of we hope to have some flexible guidance if we have good numbers, or we hope that those who are vaccinated can have times where they're wearing their mask in school less, but that was not a decision that we came from. So I apologize to our community if they felt some misinformation was being communicated. That was a mistake on the part of the Community Advocate. So this is our guidance. This is hopefully what will be reported correctly in the Community Advocate after.
I want to have just, acknowledge we love the Community Advocate. They provide a really positive framework of amazing news and are the only print news left. So to be honest, we're very invested in making sure that we collaborate with them. And I want to give a shout out to them making an effort to make sure that they are reporting what's going on in Westborough and our surrounding communities. I think it's very, very helpful. We did, and you will see when I step through the recommendations, recommend the adoption of Department of Public Health's guidelines, which would allow for flexible masking, but not until after we receive Board of Health approval, and also until we move through the first 3 weeks. And so with that, why don't we step into the discussion, and I can walk you through it. So the first question is really, the major area of a lot of discussion is around masking. And so the question is, what is masking for the start of school in Westborough? There in yellow, you see bolded, we are planning to use the same staged entry that we used following vacations last year, where we would do 2 weeks after of a different practice until we felt that people had had a chance to clear from vacations and travel, and also just to give us an opportunity to make sure that we were being extra protective. So right now, the recommendation is that we will mask for 10 days following last year's protocols. We will mask for 10 days following Labor Day. So the recommendation that we're making is that we will open in at the first 3 weeks of school. All faculty and staff, once we welcome students on September 1st, will be masked. From there, the other protocols are noted, which is masks currently by CDC guidelines and with affirmation from DPH and DESE. Masks are not necessary outdoors and may also be removed when eating. All faculty and students will work to confirm vaccination status with us over the first 2 weeks of school to provide current data so that we can interact with the Board of Health to let them see the vaccination rate of our students and faculty so that they can make a sound decision around whether or not to move forward to the Department of Public Health flexibility in masking. Masks need to be worn in the nurse's office. That's per the Department of Public Health. And masks need to be worn on the bus, and that's per national transportation guidelines. That's K to 12, pre-K to 12, all people in public transportation must be masked. The other note is that regarding masks and all other metrics that we will use this year, we will follow last year's protocols as outlined with the Board of Health, which is that they don't have a definitive number because as Dr. Ehrlich and other board members, Dr. Walsh, have discussed over time, the use of understanding the data up close to see if it's school-based, to see if it's clustered in a room, to see if it's clustered in a school, to look at community numbers, to take the full composite data was the benchmark that they used to advise and guide us last year around any recommended changes. We will maintain that practice of bringing our weekly data to them should we have any changes that we want to make or that they feel we should consider making given the status of our benchmark numbers. Last year, we posted weekly. I will continue to do that, and I'll talk about that a little bit further down in the document. So that is how we plan to open school with regard to masking. And the next question from there is, well, what after the 3 weeks? So after the 3 weeks, we would take the first 3 weeks of school to use the SNAP data on student vaccination rate to confirm where we are, to also check with faculty vaccination rates for new faculty and people we've onboarded. And we would bring that to the Board of Health and look at the town illness rate as other benchmark and ask for them to vote for flexible masking for vaccinated individuals, faculty, and students in a shift that would follow the Department of Public Health and DESE's recommendations. We will seek that request following an affirmation of our benchmarks. That would begin after September 20th. So that data and information and update in those meetings will be shared with everybody as we progress towards heading to that meeting. If we went with the Department of Public Health guidelines, here are the benchmarks that we would then move to. Students in pre-K to 6 would need to continue to mask indoors because they are not vaccinated. Currently, we're including 6th grade in that and not looking at having a split grade of students who can or couldn't mask because of age. And again, all of these protocols will be reviewed and discussed as the year progresses. But that is the current DPH guideline, and we're accepting that. All unvaccinated staff and students must mask indoors. As noted in those guidelines, DPH also says, regardless of vaccination rate, anybody with a higher risk for severe disease or in their household or for themselves are encouraged to mask even if vaccinated. So those are the expectations. And the last one is that regardless of moving forward with DPH, the students will be asked to mask at different times, and the general practice will be if asked to put on a mask, students will be compliant at school and do so. So that would be the framework with which we would request to move forward by the end of September, mid to the end of September, based upon where we are with DPH. I'd like to progress all the way through the document and then go back and discuss it by section if you're comfortable with that. But Kristen, just advise if you want to pause and talk as we go, it's fine. If there's a burning question, just please let's indicate and we can stop and pursue it. Otherwise, we can go back and take general questions.
Okay, just
Next,
can I just say one thing about all of
Yep.
this? So we set a benchmark for 3 weeks and to reevaluate. I want to just give a scenario if we decide at that time we want to continue with universal masking, or if we're told by Board of Health that it's strongly advised that we continue with universal masking. I want to be clear that we'll continue to set benchmarks, so it doesn't mean that September 20th then is the decision for the entire school year moving forward, that we will continue to set benchmarks so that we can reevaluate and move towards the DPH guidance.
No, thank you. I think it's important to understand that, as we all learned last year, it's a cycle of review based upon data and will be a continual part of your meetings this year, which you have to, get ready for. I think keeping the standard COVID update where we do the benchmarks and check in quickly and to make sure that we're moving forward as needed and that it's part of your regular voting and discussion cycle is definitely anticipated. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just want to be clear about that.
No, that's very helpful.
We're not making decisions now for the entire school year.
Yeah, I definitely, I think we've all seen the evolution of things, change as we go along. So when we look at the physical distancing, 2 important areas of note, which is, will physical distancing still be required? In general, I'll take a statement and say no, in that Westborough Public School classrooms will return to a much more normal setup. Students will be able to work in groups and interact as they did in the past. Of course, we will continue to use our best practices to maintain additional physical distances in doing so, while allowing them really throughout the day to move more normally and to interact more typically. I think our staff is very skilled at how to manage classroom setups, to create both space and opportunities for students to then interact meaningfully, providing a sense of normalcy in the design and layout of classrooms and the general way that we want to teach, with a lot of student interaction. And we will all continue to maintain appropriate kind of opportunities to keep that more distanced beyond 3 feet. At lunch, we will have additional physical distances where possible. They will allow, when possible, for 3 feet or more. And each school will use varied options based upon their lunch schedule, their layout, their coverage, their space options. Many are rotating the lunch blocks to lower overall numbers. They're allowing outdoor seating options. They're creating different table spacings and using additional spaces. I think that I want to begin by just acknowledging that our administrative team at each building level is very responsive and creative in their planning. And we will be having a set of active meetings between now and opening school just to look at, the ways that they're supporting each other and providing maximum flexibility while students are able to run their typical lunch schedule, get a lunch, eat, relax, and be able to then head into this next part of their day. Will there be assigned seats? And the answer is yes, when it's productive. We will definitely. Our school-based administrative teams and teachers did an incredible job last year to use a whole variety of strategies to manage checking and tracking seating so that they could contact trace if needed. We will basically maintain those practices in a way that we're comfortable with, such that should there be a need for contact tracing, we're well aware of who we need to reach out to and how we need to manage it. No longer are assigned seats necessary on buses because bus close contacts will not be traced. Individuals this comes right from DPH and DESE that individuals on buses must be masked, and as such, individuals who are masked on buses with the windows open are exempt from testing or quarantining in response to general protocols. What other mitigations and ventilation are you maintaining? As suggested by DPH and certainly the practice of our safety teams and all the groups we worked with last year, we will maintain healthy buildings with the ventilation practices we used last year. We have the 3-month cycle on vent changing of filters that will be maintained. They've all been changed out and labeled to start for the fall. We will utilize the in-classroom air purifiers that cover 500 to 1,500 square feet with HEPA 13 based filters available. Feel very good, as well as just the strong general ventilation and clean systems that exist in our buildings. As feasible, we will continue the hand hygiene practices and regular cleaning practices, and we will modify those based upon monitoring where we are. We also talked about, will there be any COVID testing programs implemented this year? And the answer is yes. We will be entering into implementing diagnostic testing this year. We will be able to make use of the Binex Now rapid antigen test. This is the program structure that the state is putting in place to support moving beyond quarantining large groups of students. So what the practice will be is it allows us to test and stay. So it does close contact, asymptomatic close contact updating, where it's a shallow, simple nose swab that's done by the school nurse at school with parental permission to test and stay. If a student is identified as a close contact, they have an opportunity to test each morning and stay, doing a 7-day cycle. That's usually inclusive of the weekend. They're not necessarily tested for 7 days, but it needs to cover 7 days. It's usually 5 days of swab and then a Monday check before they then would move back into no active testing. Many districts around us are actively entering into using this and used it. Marlborough used it all last year as a test and stay and was effective. I feel like the data on this program is good. It eliminates a lot of the problems that moved us away from the cumbersomeness of the pool testing and also the lack, when your numbers are so low, the effectiveness of pool testing is negligible. And so I think other districts that have such low incidences are moving away from pool testing into the Binex as a way of kind of maintaining progress in the way that they're working with keeping students in school. This allows us also to test for a set of mild symptoms that might be symptomatic to just a cold and you want to check before you send a kid home. It also allows us to check faculty as well should they have a question, that they've got a symptom of concern. So I think there's a nice set of protocols here bringing us into the fall that give us more flexibility and the responsiveness that families and faculty want to see. Building nurses will continue to provide guidance on quarantining needs and PCR testing when necessary. If a COVID case is detected, there's a clear protocol for that. We've lived with that before. The nurses will call you, that student heads home. They need to have a cycle of days where they are quarantining, and then they need to test and be clear of illness before return. That's a system we know well, again, well managed by our nurses. And I just want to give a shout out to our nurses. They remain an amazing team that does such a good job. And we look forward to hopefully the stresses of their year being more manageable for them, but they're ready to partner and continue making sure that we have a smooth, well implemented year. Yes, we will do some contact tracing. It becomes much more limited. It's 3 feet or more. And in most cases, we can space students and manage their day effectively. Asymptomatic vaccinated staff and students are exempt from quarantining. So the benefit of being a highly vaccinated district is that they're exempted from quarantining as long as they're asymptomatic. And given last year, the rates of illness, we had none come out of quarantining. So I think we had like 2 across the span of the year. So in terms of, effectiveness, I think it follows suit that now that students that are vaccinated, unless they demonstrate symptoms, they could do a rapid antigen test, check them. So, in general, they do not need to quarantine. That means that our quarantining circles remain down at pre-K to 12-year-olds. And we'll be using the Binex now and, making sure that students can test and stay.
So can I just get a clarification on that?
Sure.
So as I'm reading, asymptomatic vaccinated staff and students are exempt from quarantine. But that means that if they were a close contact, they would do the test and stay, meaning they would be tested. And if it was found negative.
As long as they're asymptomatic, they don't even have to do test and stay because they're already vaccinated. But we have the opportunity, should they be concerned, and they could ask for that, the nurses can administer it, but the protocol doesn't require it.
Okay.
But I'll double check. I mean, and Daniel, we should just keep a note. Lisa, just make a note and I'll follow up. That's a kind of like refined detail. And the Binex now will require, they're going to do the train the trainer. So they'll have that all nailed down, and the nurses have quarantining guidelines in lockdown. They'll make sure that all of our implementations are tight, but I'll double check.
Okay. Thank you.
So that's good news. And I hope you're pleased to hear that. We're moving forward rapidly on that in a good place. So we talked a little bit about how we'll continue to communicate. We'll use the survey to gather questions this time, and I will start a frequently asked questions document. I will continue to post weekly benchmark numbers of any illness, quarantine, cycles of information that people need. That will be shared with the Board of Health. They will help us track our benchmarks, make sure that we have both community health and building health and faculty health. And I will move forward with re-implementing the Superintendent's Advisory Council, which was a very good anchor where they put out notices by building where you could ask questions. They gathered those together, brought them forward. They did a great job to consolidate questions, so we didn't do a lot of repeating. We covered them, and then I folded those into the weekly or bi-weekly FAQ. So we'll maintain that system of open communication with people where you can get your questions answered and your feedback and your thoughts, heard readily and quickly. Judy just texted me. She's watching. I said, can you watch this for me and make sure that we know? Hold on, let me just close this. She said to me that no need to test if you are exempt because of vaccination. So she said I was correct. I just got an A+ on the nursing quota here. Communications, I feel like we learned a lot. We
Can
acknowledge
I
at the end of
interject a little
Oh
bit?
yeah,
Sorry.
sure. Go ahead.
Sure. So here's what my thought process is. For asymptomatic, from what I've learned, they could be carrying the virus. So is there any way we can, and they could have siblings who are below 12 years of age at home, and they could potentially carry it home. They may not feel sick because they are vaccinated. So I believe we need to look deeper into this. If there's close contact, we need to test them, make sure that even though they're asymptomatic, that they're not carrying the viruses home, especially those kids who have siblings at home.
Mm-hmm.
And they may not be vaccinated because of age. So I think we need to look deeper into that.
So let's put it on our list for
I
discussion.
understand what you're saying, Raghu. My thoughts on this are that we have this 20-day period where we're watching everybody that comes into school from wherever they came from. And I think during that period, irrespective of where they came from, they're wearing a mask. And at that point, I think generally we're also testing. So at this point, 20 days later, we know generally that the population in the school system is not going to be positive. And it'd be very unusual, given the vaccination rates that we have in the town, that in fact it would be positive. So now it's more likely that a sibling or others who are still, let's say, in the general population and not being, let's say, have the oversight that we have in the school system, are more likely to cause a problem that gets brought back into the school system. So I think the idea that we're going to be masked for the first 20 days and that we have the ability to test during that period to know what's going on with our population in the schools, that we're a lot better off than John Q or siblings at home. And so again, for the last year, people have been saying, get people who are eligible to be vaccinated, and I think that's the answer. So therefore, ultimately, what we're trying to do is protect all the kids who are 12 or younger, and therefore, the issue of masks is to protect them more than to protect the school population that otherwise is okay. So I think the idea that we're masked and that we are going to be testing as a result of this protocol, that I'm not so worried about what happens from the school going home.
Wait, sorry, back to, oh, sorry. Just back to Raghu's question real quick. So I, for instance, have an unvaccinated child at home, but I would also have children at the high school who are vaccinated. And so could I choose, if they were close contacts, could I choose to have my high school age child tested with the Binax test, even if they're showing no symptoms, because of, to Raghu's point, I have a child at home that's not vaccinated. So I think that I love it. I love this discussion. That's exactly why we're here. So I'll carry that back to Judy, and they're going to be doing the training and implementation. So I'll get the answers to that. I certainly think, right now the base guidelines don't require it, but we can also go above and beyond should we feel like it gives us extra protective value. As long as the testing supply holds for us, we need to focus on students unvaccinated first. I think we should be able to answer that question. So Judy's listening. She and I will look at it, and she thinks we should be able to do that. And I think that, if somebody's identified as a close contact, we can easily say to a family, yes, if you want them to test, we're fine with that. So it gives us, again, flexibility and responsiveness. And I think being able to look, to Steve's point, it gives us time to see what is the true protective value of the high vaccination rate in town, as we track illness in the community and see where we are. And then we have layers of responsiveness, which feels good.
Well, the bottom line on this is, number one, the testing is being funded by the state, which wasn't the case last year. Secondarily is that we can use the school system to protect the rest of the population based on using that free testing. So I think we're in the best of all positions to be able to maintain, let's say, the ability of students coming home from school not to spread the virus with their siblings or at home. As a result, this is an all-powerful circumstance, I think, that we didn't have even a week ago, prior to the knowledge of, number one, of what the vaccination rate is in Westborough. And let's be proud, in fact, that probably Westborough is the highest vaccinated town in the Commonwealth at all levels. Almost all levels are highly vaccinated. And so, having said that, I look forward to the fact that we will help the community with this program, moving forward with it.
No, that's good.
Thanks.
Lisa, you were going to add something.
Yeah, along the same lines, only because I certainly have received some communications from parents over the last several weeks. And of those 16 emails, one might expect more or less, I have no idea. But there were different schools of thought. And the question that Raghu just brought forth, and Sarah, that if you have a vaccinated child and an unvaccinated child, that should we get to the DPH guidelines, get to that place past these 3 weeks, that parents will have the choice to recommend or instill or mandate, whichever word you want to use, for your child to be masked even if they're vaccinated. So even if I don't have an unvaccinated child, I may be sending my child, very likely, with a mask who is vaccinated, because I may just choose to do that. And so that is really where I think it could cover what Raghu was saying and Sarah, where you could make that choice.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point, Lisa. I mean, I think, again, like in the community, we see a kind of flexible masking choice based upon family circumstances, age of students, with parents and siblings. And I think, we have a good number of faculty who still mask because they have young children at home. So, again, there's a whole array of kind of a new evolution of a culture of masking.
the question is, what are our base guidelines? And then above and beyond, the flexibility to give people a sense of control and direction in how they want to manage their health is really the goal, and it's striking all those balances. So I think there's many good things at play here in the layout of our opening plans. One of the other things, I'll just keep moving, this is a very good quality discussion. One of the things people ask is, what about a return to all of the special events, the things that make school and the district special, concerts, dances, open houses, events? The answer is yes, we will be returning to special events such as concerts, dances, open houses, theater, plays. We are working for it. We will make sure for everything that both our students, families, and faculty enjoy, we will take, that's one of the big celebrations is, as of now, the opportunity to begin doing more of that. We will take each item as it comes and closer to the date of each, share communication about how we will be implementing it, and we'll make necessary modifications that allow for good choices, and then also work with the Board of Health to make sure they're comfortable. That's a protocol we utilized last year quite successfully. We'll maintain that. We call them, we say, here's how we're going to do it. Here's what the parameters of the event are. We had a very good routine for that. And as we pick up more events and things going on with confidence that the parameters are available to us to hold events. One question somebody had was, you will be able to volunteer this year. Yes, people will be able to volunteer. They will always be masked initially starting, but not for the first month of school. We're going to wait, and we'll activate volunteering once we kind of get our feet under us, look at our protocols, again, tracking all the benchmarks we've talked about in our community, to figure out where we are. What about sports? We're super excited for the sports season to begin. It opens next week. Students are already, practicing and getting ready. We, kind of preseason, we will play all sports following the MIAA guidelines with guidance from the local Board of Health. As we did last year, we will proceed. Communications will come out from Athletic Director Johanna DiCarlo, who did a great job. Just shout out to Johanna for her communications last year and regular flow of information that allowed people to be confident that we were doing everything we could to allow kids to play if possible around certain parameters. What safety guidelines are in place for music ensembles? Similarly, indoor rehearsals have guidelines, outdoor rehearsals have guidelines. We will be running bands, singing, all those parameters. They've already made, a whole array of adjustments and for where they'll place students over 10 feet apart in the auditorium for their a cappella and large choral singing, so they have ways to space out, and masking when they need to. Brass and wood instruments will have the bell covers as they did last year. Through fall performances, as we track where we are, continuing to work with Board of Health to make those adjustments. A lot of people called our district to find out, how we did pieces of what we did, because we maintained our jazz ensembles and things, and we're able to get some opportunities for students to really enjoy their playing. Again, our theater program, I think, was very inhibited last year. Really looking forward to the beginning of fall theater programming for students who are anxious to open up that part of their life again. And then lastly, just the clarification that this is directly from the Commissioner of Education. It's right out of his document. Districts are no longer able to offer remote learning as a standard learning model. We are full in person. We are returned to more normal practices and guidelines. And those are the circumstances by which public schooling needs to happen this year. We are very fortunate to be in Westborough, where I think our faculty, our families, and again, as we've been saying, around the health of our community, very advantageous for us to make that return safely. So that's the general update. I think, again, we focused on what it looks like to open as the starting place. I think we'll use the FAQ moving forward to answer questions people will have. And many of them will shift back to being typical building-based questions. I think it's important that as part of the decentralization back to what typically would have been building-based responses from a teacher or principal or, a curriculum coordinator, those will be the ways that the information for answering questions needs to flow this year, because the majority of our practices are returning to typical parameters. In the areas that relate to needing more cohesive communications, we'll use the FAQ and start there and track it out for as long as we need it. So that's how I am anticipating, based on all the groups we've shared this document with and spoken with, opening for the start of the school year. I guess
Thank
I would
you.
open it up
Yeah.
to, yep.
Thanks for stepping us through that. I can start us off with some questions. I just have one question, and a few people have asked this of me, and I don't know the answer. Is the high school going back to having lunch in the middle of the day?
Yes, right now they're running their normal lunch schedules. We'll have hot meals served throughout district this year, with a lot of the kids wanted to see it. All of our schools are returned towards a broader array of our more typical lunch. And actually, I don't know if Dave has the answer. I can ask him because I haven't clarified with Chartwell's yet. What will be inclusive under free lunch this year, like whether that includes hot meals. Did you get any information on that yet, Dave?
Yes, I just recently got a document. I'm going through it now for logistics and specifics, and I'll provide a summary to everybody as soon as we share it amongst cabinet, and then kind of parse out the haves, the have-nots, and any individualized items that we want to be cognizant of that impact reimbursement.
Sure. Thank you. I think it's very exciting to see a range of free lunching being provided this year. And, again, our shout out to our Chartwell's group, who again has done a really good job adjusting actively to situations as we've gone along.
Yeah.
Regular lunches, again, I think you'll see through the fall that we'll be providing. I think a real enjoyment and celebration was the outdoor lifestyle we all developed. It has both great advantages and then disadvantages based upon weather, but really a lot of the buildings are planning on flexible outdoor seating, letting kids take their lunch outside and, sit on the grass, or putting extra tables outside. Even at our elementary levels, they're talking about providing outdoor options where kids can, it's beautiful in the fall, and, to get outside and sit and let us space kids a little bit more, and just, options to continue to be innovative. So I think you'll see that through the fall. High school, really, I think they'll keep, I'm not sure, I think Daniel, they're really trying to keep that, getting kids outside at that 10-minute break that they typically do in the regular schedule, to let kids get outside. Both faculty and students really enjoyed kind of the culture of broadening out the ways that break was enjoyed. I think that will probably continue. You'll get communications on all of that from principals.
Can I just make sure I comment about something with Dave in terms of the lunch and food service? I want to make sure that we sort of check on to make sure that there's cultural sensitivity to what is offered. We had a little bit of a problem at some point last year where the offering really precluded some, at least 3 cultures, from experiencing whatever the lunch offering was. And I just want to make sure we look into pieces like that, where there may not only be an option of ham and cheese, may not be the most sensitive to a few of our cultures, and really what I think represents the majority of our school system. So
This, thank you for that. It's actually been put on my radar already. So we are working with Chartwell's and their entire team on diversifying the menu options. And that's one of the forefront items of what we're trying to do, is really be cognizant of the populations that we serve, and ensure that we're not excluding not only the cultural basis of it, but also any food sensitivity that's related to the foods that we serve. So yeah, we're on it. And again, I'll include that in the summary when we communicate overall about the free meals.
Yeah, definitely. I think that the cold lunch structure was really challenging. I think a lot of our favored rice and beans meal with some students, and other types of better hot options. I think we've really looked to hopefully stay at a hot lunch choice. I know Dave's making some good plans with the team, so thank you. All right, other questions?
So
Safe. Yeah, feel
if-
free
if
to
you- go ahead.
unmute if people, I was to say, you can unmute if you have questions. Amber and I can practice our wait time.
Yeah,
See if
I know.
anything
No, I can't. I
surfaces.
wanted to say it's great. I was getting ready to say great, no questions. Thank you very much. Like I was ready. I appreciate you forcing my wait time.
Steve, do you have something?
Yeah, I would like to have the school committee consider ratifying my action to not only ask for a proposal for architectural services to be added to the HVAC for the purposes of developing access to the property at Hastings, so that in fact we can deal with the ADA requirements for the project. I have authorized an architect to be hired to provide that information so that we don't miss the opportunity for bid this fall in anticipation of coming forward with the request before town meeting for the construction money necessary for the HVAC system at Hastings. So my request is ratify that action.
Okay, Steve, can we take that up after we finish up with this reopening?
Yeah, I thought we were.
proposal? Oh, okay, no, because, sorry. We, as a school committee, need to take a vote if we approve this opening guidance. So I would like to end this meeting with some sort of action on the school committee's part.
I would move that we ratify the actions of the superintendent of schools to proceed with the program presented tonight on behalf of the town of Westborough.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any further discussion, Lisa?
So I do sort of want to go hash a little bit, just because why make that motion? Why second that motion for myself personally? And from the feedback we've received from, doing my own personal research, of data that's out there, and certainly the Westborough Board of Health meeting, if you haven't seen it, it's sort of must-see TV. And the reason I went back and I've listened to it thoroughly twice, because I really wanted to understand where they were coming from when they made a recommendation. And certainly, as Dr. Walsh had discussed, there seemed to be two trains of thought, when I really think there were three trains of thought when it comes to the feedback and questions I received from parents, not just the emails, but also verbally over the past month with parents, that there's really the universally mask, then there's the mask K-6 vaccinated optional mask for 7 through 12, or actually 12 plus, not even 7 through 12, people who are 12 plus who are vaccinated to have the option. And then there was this third piece that sort of came up about staff. And, I just want to acknowledge, one, I appreciate the feedback that the Westborough Board of Health gave, parents have given. And, it certainly it made me really think about all the sides of this situation where we are making a pretty, I don't want anyone to think that we're making this decision very lightly, just by approving the motion as set forth by the superintendent. I think there's a lot that goes into it. The one epidemiologist on the Westborough Board of Health, Dr. Ural, has really set it the stage for looking at our data from a local point of view. Not that we don't exit out of Westborough ever, that we're in a bubble, we're not. But he brought up the point that Worcester County has very different numbers when it comes to, in comparison to our own in Westborough. He also brought up some really interesting points about pre-K through 1. He brought up some very interesting points about when you hear about the recommendations from CDC and the Pediatric Association, that they're looking at national data, and that maybe even the CDC looking only at your county also maybe did a disservice for Westborough, because they are not necessarily the same. And So to only look at the data of how many kids were hospitalized across the country per day or per week, how many were found to have a positive confirmed case, I would want to know, where are those children? Which ones had symptoms versus no symptoms? I would want to know how many were hospitalized. So that data not being readily available to us in Massachusetts, as many people have also brought forth to me, and it's very clear we don't have that data. The only thing I can look inward is at Westborough. And when Ray from the Westborough Board of Health brought forward exactly what our cases look like, it wasn't a deciding factor of younger people at all. It was really even across every age group. Nobody was hospitalized. One was an entire family of 4 out of 14. There was a bunch of interesting facts about our data. And so when we go to make decisions, I think it's really important from an epidemiologist point of view about, infectious disease, that we look at that data and we look at it fairly locally, with keeping in mind that we sometimes travel outside of Westborough, that some of our staff is from outside of Westborough, and to keep an eye on it, and that we will make decisions as we go and reassess over and over again. And the other part that I thought was really prevalent was, that we've used different mitigation systems all along, that it's hand washing and 3-foot distancing where possible, ventilation system, cleaning protocols, vaccinations. And yes, there's a degree of about masking. So when you put it all together, we are going to make decisions based upon that compilation that we have in place. I thought it was really interesting hearing from, Dr. Mayer from the Westborough Board of Health's point of view versus Dr. Mayer from our schools, hearing her take about, considering, these pieces about which teachers are teaching our unvaccinated children who will be masked, and thinking about it, maybe breaking it apart to really get to the core of what is necessary in Westborough. So I really feel like a lot goes into this, and that's why I was like, we must speak about what, went into the decision even tonight for us, that Westborough Board of Health is a recommendation, and that we will reevaluate that and then make a decision. And, I thought that the Westborough Board of Health was very, thoughtful about where they were coming from, and that they will continue to reassess, as will we. That's all.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Oh, Steve, you can go.
Well, I just want to say, from the very beginning, this whole thing, I believe, is science. And of course, 3/4 of the country seems to argue with science. But in my own opinion, you can sit down as an individual with logical thinking and say, okay, what do we do? What do we do in a pandemic for which this is all brand new? Well, we've had a year of what it used to be, and now we are on the cusp of the new problem with the Delta variant. And we know how we performed last year, and obviously the data that was presented tonight from information that Amber brought forward, I assume from the Board of Health, basically said that our process last year was quite protective, that we had minimal problems for families in town in regards to the school system, that our teachers union stepped up, and the majority of them, high majority of them, are vaccinated, and in fact for themselves, protect themselves, but also for the kids in the school system. But where are we right this minute? And based on what we talked about right this minute, we have a program in place for which we will know within 20 days whether the kids coming back to school have a problem. And if they do we have tools that will help us solve that problem, not only for the kids in school, but for the kids at home, such that this program that we're talking about, and obviously will be modified to the benefit of all the students as we go forward and learn more, is a scientific approach to basically protect every kid in the school system as well as their families. And from that point of view, that's the basis under which my feeling is we're doing very well. And I'm hopeful that a result of the programs that we're suggesting, for which, granted, we're talking about a new variant of the virus, but I'm suggesting, in fact, gives us the tools as members of the school committee to voice our opinion as to how good our program is. And I'm going to say, in my opinion, the program that we're espousing now to go forward with is the best one that we can come up with to protect the kids in school and protect their families at home. And as a result of that, I'm hardly in favor of what we're suggesting tonight. And given the choice, when the vote comes, I will vote in favor of it. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. And Sarah, did you have something?
I was going to just add that I do think there's a psychological, component to everyone being back indoors together and, closed spaces with all the kids there. Everyone's back this year. So I do appreciate the 3 weeks or the beginning, which is really actually 11 school days if you count them out, but it's 3 weeks total of, getting everyone back in, establish their routines, wearing the mask, having everyone wearing the mask and then reevaluating, look at the data. I also appreciate using the DESI system, the test and stay, making use of those tools, like Steve and Lisa said, and the Board of Health. Always thank them for weighing in and giving us their guidance. And I know that they do their research in their time, so we always appreciate them as well. But I would like to re-look at the 12-year-olds, like the Mill Pond. I know the Department of Public Health guidelines is kind of going the pre-K to 6 at this point, but is somewhere in one of our meetings or discussions when we get back with the Board of Health, look at for just 12-year-olds in general, because if they turn 12 during the year and get themselves vaccinated, hopefully they can be afforded the same optional masking as the other vaccinated students. But like I said, if we have the data and the information, then we can make a decision going forward. And also, I know, Amber, you talked to the Board of Health, on a daily basis these days. And hopefully, our meeting, we meet every 2 weeks. We can talk about masks every 2 weeks. I'm fine with that. Like Kristen said, I don't want to make a decision for the whole year tonight. And then, the Board of Health meeting too, if Amber talks to them, she can bring them to the meeting. I don't want a public meeting scheduled meeting to hold us up from making quicker decisions, or if that's possible. But I'm in favor of the plan presented. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
I think the first 3 weeks absolutely makes sense. From my own experience, this past summer, I was on vacation to Miami, and the day that we landed, that night, we went to a restaurant to have dinner. And I kid you not, we were the only family who were masked in that restaurant. Nobody else in the restaurant was masked. So I'm sure there are many families who have gone to places where masking was not really, and probably vaccinations was not really followed, through, and they could be asymptomatic. So bringing them to school, keeping them safe, keeping others safe is vital.
Thank you.
That's excellent feedback. I just want to make one other note before you finalize your vote that, it's important to recognize too, when Sarah mentioned there's a psychological component to return, there's, both positive and anxiety provoking aspects of all psychological bell curves with all types of students and faculty. And so I think I just want to emphasize that at our summer retreat planning and across faculties, we're really continuing to look at the social emotional learning framework, looking at making sure we have a continued robust set of mental health supports, a lot of dynamic programming, as well as curricular work, and just a continued commitment to making sure that we're reflective about that for everybody that's a part of the district. So, there's certainly a hope to create a celebratory, safe, and well-paced return to school. We have very, very good sense of summer programming, giving us a good sense about where kind of at least a sampling of students are. And we look forward to the start of the year. And I think these guidelines set us up to really start successfully. So thank you for the conversation.
Thank you. And I just want to say that I agree with what a lot of the things that everyone has already said, and that I just want to thank everyone who reached out to us, to me or to the school committee in general, just to provide their thoughts and feedback and opinions and facts and articles. And we really appreciate everyone, sharing with us their feelings about coming back to school. And as Lisa had said, it did kind of fall into a few categories equally. So I just want to acknowledge there's a lot of feelings out there, and we're going to take this one step at a time and do the best that we can for the safety of the students in our school. We really want them back. We really want them learning. And that's what our goal is here. So with that, I think we're ready for a roll call vote. So we'll start with Sarah.
Dulé, yes.
Raghu.
Nandan, yes.
Lisa.
Edinburgh, yes.
Steve.
Durrett, yes.
And Vincent, yes. So I'm very pleased to have this plan going forward. And it's a strong start to a school year that will, I'm sure, be full of decision making.
It will. That's what we do. I just want to give a shout out to our faculty who have started to articulate, their readiness to return, the recognition of the rest we tried to provide them over the summer, the good work that they always do. You are fortunate to be shepherds of an incredibly strong faculty. They took, a really rough stretch in the last year and a half, and bringing them back in a place feeling good is a huge focus of our administrative team. And so I just want to welcome everybody back to the year. I want to frame our interactions, our sharing, our communications, and our support as assuming best intentions, of celebrating people's best efforts, and of framing our communications and our interactions with kindness and a support to wanting all students to thrive, and faculty and families. So I welcome you all back to the school year. We're exceptionally ready to begin, and we feel fortunate to continue to serve you. So thanks.
Thank you. But Steve, before we get to the item that you brought up on the agenda, we also had, if we needed to review any revisions to policy EBCFA about face coverings. And I looked that over, and I don't see any updates that we need to make right now, because we are opening our schools with everyone masked. And it's kind of like the masking policy is sort of where we left off at the end of last year, when all students were invited to return to school. So at this point, unless anyone has any objections, we'll let that mask policy stay, and we'll just know that we'll have to bring it up if we revise any further guidance.
Understood.
All right, that sounds good. We'll have that sit there and help guide us. And so, Steve, you need us to do an authorization for an ADA study with the Hastings HVAC system?
Yes, and in fact, because I've already authorized them to proceed based on timeliness of the effort, I would ask that the school committee ratify my action so I can sign the contract for the purposes of the ADA addition to the HVAC contract.
Okay, so moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, thank you, Raghu. Any discussion?
Yes. What was the amount, the financial amount? The amount.
$5,000.
$5,000.
$5,000. And this is to do an ADA study so that we are in compliance prior to the work beginning?
Yeah, the purpose would be, once they do the review, to create whatever the specification changes would be, so it can be included with the bid for the HVAC work at Hastings.
Any other discussion? All right, we'll take a roll call vote on that. Sarah?
Dulé, yes.
Raghu?
Nandan, yes.
Lisa?
Edinburgh, yes.
Steve?
Right, yes.
And Vincent, yes. So Steve, you are authorized to move forward with that. And
Thank you.
thank you. Before we adjourn, Amber, I just want to summarize next steps. So we have this document that we'll be sharing with families and staff on Thursday. And then in that document will be a link that people can submit further questions. So staff or parents can submit further questions that they might have, or, you know, clarifications if something, you know, seems to be confusing in the guidance.
Yep, exactly correct.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Our next meeting will be August 30th. That's a Monday, and that is a traditional school committee meeting for us. We always meet that evening, which is the first night back for staff and faculty. So we look forward to welcoming them back on Monday the 30th, and we'll have our school committee meeting then, just to get ready to open the school buildings on September 1st and welcome back all our students. So I'm really excited. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move the motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Raghu.
I'll second.
Thank you, Sarah. And we can do a roll call vote to adjourn. Sarah,
Tula, yes.
Raghu,
Nandan, yes.
Lisa,
Edinburgh, yes.
Steve,
Brett, yes.
and Vincent, yes, 5-0. We are adjourned. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Welcome
Good
back
night.
to the year.